About 2 years ago, I lost my brother to gun violence. He suffered from mental health issues with depression and things like that. And my mother didn't know of any services at the time, and I didn't know either before me working for mental health. So she really didn't access any for him. So it made me just want to get into violence prevention work, and I've known a lot of people in the neighborhood that I grew up that have died due to gun violence, and just the mental health part that comes with it, along with being traumatized by gun violence and drugs in your community when you're growing up around it.
Children that nobody really wants to take responsibility for, and that's clearly a large group of children, and it is very definitely children with mental health issues.
Children who just have fallen through the cracks.
Nobody wants these kids. In terms of systems, you know, the justice system wants to turn them over to the social welfare system, who wants to turn them over to the mental health system, who wants to turn them over to special ed. There's no coordinated effort to work with all parts of the children and their families and their communities to claim these children and say, what's going on here? Why is it going on? What can we do to assist this child, this family, and make sure that this doesn't happen again in this particular generation?
An unclaimed child is a child who no one seems to care about, who no one seems to hear. They're not listening for this child. They're not hearing this child's cries for help. And if they hear it, they're ignoring it. They don't claim them. I was an unclaimed child. I was a foster kid, and I didn't get services when I needed them. I don't think I needed a lot of services, but I needed to understand why I was this child who had no mother, no father, in a system where people, to me, didn't really care about me, didn't include me, had difficulty bonding with someone, you know, connecting with people. You know, if you're born into foster care, and I was born into it, there's no one to nurture you when you're a baby and to love you and to care about you. And as you grow, you do other things. You get rebellious, you know, you give everybody a little bit of, I'm so sorry to all the foster parents in the world that I had, that probably some of them wanted to give me a chance, and I gave them the blues.
Because the unclaimed child is the invisible child. You know, she goes on about her life, struggling, but no one has claimed state that it's because we failed in education, we failed in nourishment and food stamp, we failed in housing, we failed. No one will admit that. So that's the unclaimed child. No one will admit that their organization or what they're doing never really help this person out or these persons. They just keep going on about it, their little ways, until they become adult and end up in the penal system. Because if you can't take care of yourself legally, you will take care of yourself illegally.
I am a family member, and having had the experience of raising a child, my third son, from the age of 3, who had been labeled seriously emotion disturbed, and that experiences of having raised him and the loneliness of that, not being connected. The only families that I saw were families that were in clinic settings, not having any idea that there were as many youngsters and families struggling with the same issues, but having no support system, because families, for the most part, you weren't really welcomed in homes because Johnny might disrupt the gathering. And so you found that your invitations, family invitations, were dwindling. So you became very lonely and isolated. Families want to know, is Johnny doing better getting on the bus without help so he can go to school and have a good day? How's he doing in school? Is he having a better day? Is he learning? What's been the difference there? And the community. Has he got more friends in the community? Is he willing to go to the park and he's, you know, got friends? They don't all just call him names, or is he? So that's the part. Is he functioning? Is his life better? Is his quality of life better because he's functioning better? That's what we want. We don't want to get these calls from school. We don't want to get this call from the police at the park. We don't want these calls that Johnny can't come out and play in the neighborhood. So I think it's a two-way street on research. I think it's critical to create the data of what is there and have a discussion about that and see how that fares with the front line, how families think that fits for them, but also for them to begin to think about, and I think that's what researchers do, they bring new information, just the asking the questions. So I think that Jane continues to reclaim our kids by continuing to ask the right questions, and I'm so glad that she's doing this, because it's now, again, going to put them on notice about who's doing what or what we aren't doing.
I grew up in a family with a mother who had very severe depression, and she really had it within all of her memory. Unfortunately, she came along at a time when effective treatments really didn't exist. So I watched her, over the course of my lifetime, suffer enormously. She was in her late 60s when she first got real effective treatments when some of the new medications came out. I have a daughter who had severe depression after the birth of her third child, scared us to death. We knew what it was. We were able to get her treated, but as we looked back, we said, you know, in her childhood there was this and there was this. When her daughter had the first symptoms of depression, we knew what to do. Jessica got treatment. She is an amazing young woman who is now in college. Her life experiences are so different than they were for my mother or even my daughter. Every child deserves to have the experience that Jessica has had.
Well, I feel like we've made some progress, but we seem to be in a holding pattern again. And I know change is difficult. Change is always practiced on paper, and it needs really strong advocates, family advocates, consumer advocates, youth advocates, to actually put it into practice. And the obstacles that I think and the challenges that you run into are just sometimes feels like they're insurmountable. And then you get tired. I mean, you do get tired, and you have to find that inspiration again, that hope, and that's what I guess these meetings, coming to these meetings where everybody else is there, you can start to feel that inspiration or that hope again. Because when you're out in the trenches fighting constantly, it does wear you out. I mean, you become very cynical. And so even when people are talking about the positives, you're going, mm-hmm.
I've heard now, they take what I say with some validation. They say, hey, this parent knows something. She's been there. And she stood up nights and she's trying to talk a child out of hurting herself or something like that. And I see that they also respect me as a voice, almost as somebody authentic, knowing different things. Once, 25 years ago, it was like, okay, thank you, Ms. Ellerine, thank you very much. And they would kind of brush me off. And I didn't know how to come back with, no, you guys are going to hear me. So I would just walk out and say thank you. And I didn't know what I was saying thank you for, because they hadn't done anything for me. But I would say thank you and humbly leave out the room. But now, if it takes a pound on the desk, you guys are going to hear me.
25 years ago, when we began our work at the Research and Training Center, it was very rare for families to be even involved in treatment planning meetings, let alone youth. As we make progress, we keep raising the bar. So we make progress and then we raise the bar and then we say, but there's more to do. So one of the things, some of the areas that I think where we have made progress have to do with both practice and policy around involving families in decision making. We do much better at the clinical level than now we have to take on the policy and fiscal areas and so on. Families and youth need to be much more involved. Some good things have happened over the last 25 years. We still have a lot of problems. It's possible to change. We need the will, we need the leadership, we need the vision, and obviously we need some changes in policy and funding structure. And I do believe in collective effectiveness. So I really think with the right kind of organization and the right kind of emphasis, I think it's possible to do what we want to do.
Moving forward, we really need to really understand, again, really listening to families, meeting them where they are, and being able to help them in an effective way.
There's a lot of grassroots work that's already happened. People don't need to start from scratch. There's so much expertise out there. There's so many families that could benefit. Does that part need to be funded? Absolutely.
You know, if we really want to change the high rate of mental illness in America, we've got to change our culture here, American culture, so it's supportive of families and supportive of communities. I think we need to change that paradigm, change that way of thinking and expanding. What does mental health, what does wellness really mean? And I think it's the cultural communities or anybody who's suffered from a lack of mental health appropriate services, they're the ones that have the answer. So I think we need to ask those people, the cultural communities, the LGBTQ community, children. Children are so clever. They'll tell you what they'll need if we ask. So I just feel like the expertise are not in the ones who've been doing mental health for eons. The expertise are people who are suffering from a lack of appropriate care.
Unclaimed child is a young person that has all the potential of being the greatest leader and revolutionary person in the world. Unclaimed children to me is a seed of all potential, and if they're just given just half as much as ordinary young people that are claimed children, you know, if they just get half the nourishment, you know, half of the support and half of the love, they will value it so much more, and they will become a great person, a great leader. You know, the next person that other youth would want to be like when they're down and out, and when they need somebody and they need a leader to look up to. They're going to look at that unclaimed child that was just like them.